I was once told a tale that I'll always remember. An Arabic story set in antique times. Of a girl without beauty, without equal in beauty, called Laila, and a madman Quys driven mad by love. When 16 years had burnished her brows and beauty had blossomed all over her face, her father, the chief of that thriving town, invited the world's poets to sing her praises. The one who spoke best of her many virtues would win as his prize her delicate hand. So hundreds gathered on hearing the news as these poets converged from across the land. One by one they presented their verses, till the field was reduced to 2. All that was left was for these great wordsmiths to contest the prize in public view. Both men were so wise, both men were so grey, both men were old with beards so long, that they had the skill with words to convey the deepest passions in the form of song. Laila was perched above like a sparrow, her fair face hidden by a Persian frieze. The admiring crowd gathered in the square below, tasting her perfume as it sailed the breeze. The first poet shuffled up to his place and let his words out into that space. The crowd politely clapped his effort, full of clever phrases and marvellous wit. So the second poet was then invited to see whether he could better it. and flowery and rich in surprise. All eyes now on the chief and his final verdict, on who would win Laila, his daughter, the prize. So the chief said, "My effusive thanks to these great wizened aged poets, but now I must choose the first or the latter, and choosing between them is no easy matter. So let me declare, the first is the victor. He is the one who will marry my daughter." And from Laila's balcony, from this young girl, who was always composed like music or a song, came a terrible gasp that fell with a curl down to that square, onto its startled throng. And in that crowd, a young boy slowly raised his head, hidden as it was underneath his cloak. And this is the remarkable thing the boy said. With a steady voice, he proudly spoke. "My chief, what you're saying truly amazes. You can't marry Laila to one of these wrecks who scar her beauty with their empty phrases and drown her soul in their insincere depths. I say there's no skill in being a poet when your dazzling daughter is the muse. So if you'll allow it, let me prove it, why I should win her and they should lose." While the crowd, they laughed, they crowed and cheered. Let this youth try, let him do better. Then these two great poets with their long beards, they filled the square with their braying laughter. So the youth stood up, made his way to the centre, up to Laila's window, where she was still hidden, and the beautiful words that he started to spin for her flew out like butterflies, glorious and sudden. The crowd was stunned, shaken to their bone. Not one of them could move, let alone speak. You'd think they were statues made out of stones, except for the tears that ran down their cheeks. For in that young boy's rapturous words, they felt endless rain from endless skies, exquisite songs from innumerable birds, countless colours from iridescent dyes. The most wondrous poem anyone had known, with dewdrops hanging on each of its notes, came from that mysterious boy yet unknown, and it planted an ache in each of their throats. The chief exploded in a terrible rage, snatched the boy's hood, his face to expose, so on that square, on that bare stage, everyone saw who the young boy was. It was Quys, an urchin, an orphan, starved, dirty and soiled from his chin to his feet, his clothes all torn, his torso scarred from years of scraping a life in the street. The chief went red with incandescent anger. How dare this slave, dirty, dull and deprived, presume to win my wealthy daughter with his cheap words, make her his wife? I cannot compass this insult, and for the slight, the boy will be punished. And with his anger glowing vibrant, he declared Quys would forever be banished. Wait, came the cry from Laila's window, as she thrust it open, showing her face. Father, please don't banish Quys, I beg you. If you have any care for him, show him, for me, show him some grace. Begone, cried the chief to his tragic daughter, though the crowd had cheered to support her speech, and Quys and Laila's love slipped through their hands like water, so desperately close, yet so far out of reach. Thus on pain of death, Quys was banished. The town watched after him as he shuffled sadly away. His dark eyes held Laila's for as long as they could, till he vanished out of the town gate that marked his way to the cruel desert, a new home for his exile, where he would be left to die in the heat, with a love unloved, empty and futile, preserved only in the rhymes he'd left at their feet, on a day the town would always remember. Now we are 10 years later, in the desert furnace, a caravan snaking through the boiled earth. The camels and merchants were baked in dryness, so at an oasis they made their birth. There to their horror they discovered a young man, scarred and bearded, his eyes like dry stones, cowering and naked in the desert sand, starving and parched and burnt to his bones. What are you doing here? They asked the stranger. Out in this desolate land all alone? How have you survived? Were you not in danger? But all the boy could do was groan. So they clothed and nursed, watered and fed him, as he gibbered and jabbered and gibbered away. Away from the hand of death they led him, even though nonsense was all he could say. Tell us, young man, they firmly demanded. Pluck up your wits, your story to tell, how in this terrible place you have landed. What has driven you to this hell? Laila was the only answer he gave them. I am Laila's madman, he said. Who is this woman? The merchants asked him. How has she cost you the wits in your head? I wrote a poem for her that I once recited, and was so punished for that misdemeanor. A moment of beauty that she inspired means now I can never again see her. Tell us what you said, the traders begged. So he opened his mouth and started to sing. the sweetest sounds they had ever heard, and this is what he said to them. Those merchants were passionately fired by the astounding words that came from his mouth. But no matter how much more they inquired, no more sense could be gained from the youth. So they left that madman deep in the desert, with water, food and all they could spare, and towed to the nearest town, their target, to trade with the locals and sell their wares. There they related their remarkable story of the strange encounter with a man they had met, and his love for a beauty that he'd called Layla, and the wondrous poetry that he had lodged in their heads. And an old man cried out, "Oh, terrible horror!" A sudden recognition invaded his cheeks. "The Layla you speak of is our dead chief's daughter, and that madman, her lover, is a boy called Quys. He was banished when he presumed to praise her with poetry more moving than any we'd known. But the words he spoke only served to shame her, so no one would marry her or make her his own. Except me. So I married her out of pity, old man though I am, to give this orphan some shelter. But for 10 years she stayed in her room in the city, lamenting the loss of her boyish lover. So please, traders, go back to Quys, find that man, take this message from me. Say that Layla has loved him all these long days, and only for her sake I make this plea. Since she's now my wife, he may not see her, but sound may reach where light can't tread. Tell him to come and once again woo her, with beautiful words to lay in her bed. The traders left with their strange message, and for many months nothing more was heard, and Layla remained locked away in her dotage, haunted by Quys's maddening words. When in the dead of night, one fine quiet evening, a shadowy figure crept through the town streets. With all the townsfolk were soundly sleeping, the silhouette stopped beneath Layla's frieze. And while she lay on her bed still sobbing, he crept in the shadows beneath her room, and when he was ready started reciting the most wondrous, magical, unforgettable poem. The desert sands all stopped to listen. The bright moon held its tracks in the sky. The stars forgot for a moment to glisten. The midnight wind started to cry. The earth for a second stopped its turning, and everyone who dreamed, dreamed only of love. They dreamt of a naked boy quietly reciting a poem to his beautiful girl up above. So it was that once a year he'd return, without fail. Once again he'd return to woo her, and she in her room would fiercely burn with joy at the wondrous words he'd tell her. And here ends the tale of Quys and Laila. As it was told to me, I've told it to you. There is no moral, but kindly remember their magnificent love, incomplete, unfulfilled, but true.